Okay, part two of this is the pacemaker cells. The pacemaker cells are very interesting. The SA node and the AV node have the ability to depolarize, or essentially auto-depolarize. Remember we talked about automaticity and the ability for them to, the ability for those cells to create their own action potential. And their ability to create their own action potential allows them to basically set the heart rate. So without any input from the parasympathetic nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system, the SA node would be intrinsically at approximately 100 beats a minute. So that's where that's its pace, and it's due to, once again, as you might imagine, membrane potential and the flux of ions entering and leaving the cell. So it's the same ions that we talked about in this example, but we have a little bit different thing. We have different names. We have a funny sodium channel. We have a transient calcium channel. We have a long-lasting calcium channel, and we have a regular potassium channel. But what allows the SA node its unique ability to spontaneously depolarize at a rate and stay at that rate is due to its membrane potential. Once again, we never seem to get away from membrane potential. A little above there. So if we look at it from the same time scale as 0, 0.15, 0.3, our cell looks a little bit like this. So I'm just going to draw a line at minus 50, and then we have a threshold around here. Okay, so as sodium enters the cell, I'm just going to draw backwards because it works a little bit better that way. So this is sodium entering. And then that. Okay, so here, and then calcium enters here. Then we get more calcium entering here. Potassium leaving. Spell that correctly. And then we repolarize, and then we start the process over. So that's pretty neat. So essentially every 300 milliseconds, the heart beats, we get this action potential. It essentially resets itself so that more as sodium enters, the concentration of sodium increases, the concentration of calcium increases. We get a large influx of calcium, triggering the action potential. Potassium begins to leave, repolarizes the cell, sodium enters, calcium enters, and we get another action potential. The timing on it is what makes it work. And it all has to do with our permeabilities, once again. We'll use a logarithmic scale one more time. Oops, just 1, and then 10. So we're going to have 4 different things to keep track of on this time. 2 different calcium channels, and a sodium channel and a potassium channel. So let's talk about sodium first. So the permeability of sodium, went up to 0. So let's start here. At 0, and then we have a small period, and then like so. That's our sodium flux through a sodium channel. And this is happening through a channel called a funny channel. And it's funny because they have a voltage, this is a voltage gated channel, but it only opens when the membrane's at negative values. Most of the ion channels that we've talked about previously open at positive values. It's also very non-specific, meaning that other +1 ions can often pass through there. Calcium might be able to pass through there as well. And we call it a funny channel just because of this odd behavior. We could call it its proper name, which is the hyperpolarization activated cyclic nucleotide gated HCN channels, or the funny. I'll just prefer the funny. So that's our sodium channel, acting differently than any sodium channel we've talked about since, or previously. The next ion that enters is our transient. I'm going to use a pencil for this. This is our transient calcium. Permeability. And this is transient channel. That just means we get a short burst, and that's the end of it. And that's going to stay after that. So that right here, this permeability increase corresponds to the increase of calcium entering in before the cell hits threshold right there. So the next ion to enter is more calcium. And this is the signal here. This calcium-induced calcium release is the signal for... I went a little too high. Scratch that there. Just a little bit more. And by 0.15 seconds, it's returned back to normal permeability. Okay. And this is a long type channel. Also known as dihydropyridine receptor, or DHP, but it's just an L-type calcium channel. It needs calcium from this the transient calcium channel opening in order to induce that large amount of calcium entering into the cell and causing the depolarization. Lastly, we haven't forgotten about our friend potassium. Potassium is what's really driving all this. It's just a normal ion channel. But what's happening is, the best way of drawing it is right after here. It's going to come in, and we're going to see there we go. So you can see is potassium's leaving, restored, potassium's leaving, restored. So the permeability is fluctuating through that, driving this pacemaker potential that's going through there.